I used to work in this tiny worn-out coffee shop during college, the kind with mismatched furniture, flickering lights, and a coffee grinder that sounded like it was chewing rocks. It was a cozy mess. We had our regulars, the early risers, the over-caffeinated students, the knit and gossip crew. And then there was one guy. Every morning at exactly 7 o'clock, he'd walk in like clockwork. He always ordered the same thing, a medium black coffee, no room. Every time, without fail, he took one sip, grimaced like someone just insulted his ancestors, and muttered some variation of, "This is way too hot." He acted like we brewed it straight from the Earth's core. No matter how fresh or standard the temperature, he insisted it was boiling. Once, he even pulled out his phone and showed me a blog post that said ideal coffee should be comfortably warm. I just smiled, nodded, and handed over the exact same coffee the next day. And the next. And the next. He claimed he was worried about burning his mouth, but he also wanted it fresh and strong. He never brought his own cup. Never tipped. Never smiled. Just the same routine. Scowl, complain, leave. He'd sip loudly near the cream station, and then shake his head like he was being personally victimized by the laws of thermodynamics. Until one particular Thursday. He came in, tossed his money on the counter with dramatic flair, and said something about how he didn't want lava today. He even added a sarcastic, "Shouldn't be hard, right?" I smiled. And that's when the idea hit. See, in the back, we had a pot of coffee that had been sitting on the secondary warmer for about 2.5 hours. Forgotten. Neglected. It was sad, bitter, and barely warm. Technically still coffee, but only in the most legal definition of the word. It tasted like regret in old wood. Probably closer to motor oil than morning bliss. I poured it into a cup, snapped the lid on tight, and handed it over with the most polite smile I could muster. He took it and left, probably thinking he'd finally won. The next morning, he walked in a little slower. He looked tired, a little disheveled, less smug, like he'd been up all night reconsidering his decisions. When he ordered, he added, almost sheepishly, that he wanted it hot again. I just blinked, smiled, and asked, "You sure?" He nodded. So I gave him a fresh, piping hot cup, the usual standard, brewed just minutes before. He took a sip, gave a small nod, and walked away without a word. And from that day forward, not one complained about the temperature. Not one dramatic sip. Nothing. Just a man quietly accepting that maybe the barista knew a little more about coffee than his favorite blog did. Sometimes you just have to give people exactly what they ask for. No more, no less. Let them discover the hard way that comfortably warm coffee tastes an awful lot like misery with a splash of cardboard. That lukewarm sludge taught him something no barista ever could. And I clocked out that day with a petty little grin, smelling like espresso and triumph, and a tip jar that felt just a bit heavier than usual.